Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 97 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 23 of A Clash of Kings, which is Jon 3.
As always, we're going to chat about the chapter, we're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully we're going to provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide you some additional information about the characters and places in this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing well. How about you, my friend?
I'm good.
That's
I had a training class at work today about energy management.
Personal energy?
Yeah, I mean, it was like both professional and personal, you know. I mean, recognizing that how your personal life is affects your performance at work.
So when I asked that question, I meant not like turning off lights and...
No. Although, funnily, that was what Lucas said when I told him I was doing that. He was like, you already turn off lights, Dad. And I begrudge them every time they touch that thermostat as well.
Yes, that's right. See? You're doing your part.
Yesterday, he put it down to 75. I was like, you go get your hair cut and then we'll talk.
Yeah. I swear, in my family, nobody knows that light switches go back down. I spend my days going into rooms where nobody's in and the light is on and turning the light off. It's constant.
I remember reading an article about a guy who was raised, obviously the way we were raised, to turn light switches off, who'd become very rich, and he had children who were now sort of teenagers, and he couldn't get them to understand the concept of, like, you know, saving and being careful with things like that. And he said when they confronted him about it, he couldn't actually articulate to them why it mattered, given that they were filthy rich, you know.
Right. So, you're doing your part for the overall good of the environment.
He sort of said that, but they were like, come on, it's a lie, you know.
Right, yes. Tell that to Las Vegas.
Right, exactly. Look around, you know.
Yeah.
So I thought... I sympathise with that guy, you know, when I mean, obviously, I only sympathise with rich people to a certain point.
Right, yes. Up to a level. Yeah.
But it was interesting, Mike. My class was interesting. I treated Lucas a little bit better as a result of that class today.
Oh, wow. Okay. Do share so that we can all treat our children better.
I know it was nothing really. They just were talking about, you know, what's important in your life, and you know me and my sigil doesn't involve my family. Well, I thought of them this time, and I said my family was the most important thing. Thank you for teaching me, Mackelly. And just at that point, he was letting me down to the point of, like, vein throbbing in my temple rage.
Great timing for that.
And when I got an opportunity, I went to talk to him and I said, Lucas, you've got to help me in these kind of situations, because this is the effect that it has, in a calm and measured tone. Wow,
look at you.
I know.
Growth.
It won't last. It won't stick.
Like that time you wore the rubber bands around your wrist to try and curb your swearing. It was swearing, right? Or no, negativity. It was your negativity, right? You wore those rubber bands.
I've forgotten that entirely. Was I supposed to snap myself?
Yes, when you had a negative thought or said something negative, you had to snap yourself.
When I had a negative thought?
Yeah, it didn't last long.
Good God.
I recall about a week's worth of...
My hand presumably dropped off after a week.
That's right. You're like Uther of the White.
Yeah. That's what happened to him.
Yeah, that's right. He was too negative. Tomorrow is my baby girl's birthday, 15th birthday.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah. And so Stacy got this sign put in our front yard. It's a huge sign. It probably takes up half of the length of my front yard, maybe a little less than half of the length of my front yard. It's very intricate. It's got, all kinds of things on it. It's like a bunch of little, like it says "Happy Birthday, Molly," and each one's a different letter. Like each sign is a different letter.
I see. Yeah.
You get it. And then it has cakes and balloons and little swimmer people on it. And
Wow.
I know. And when she told me she wanted to do this, I was like, why? Like, what is the benefit of it? And she's like, well, Molly loves to be lavished with pomp and circumstance on her days. She was complaining this past weekend because she brought cupcakes to the pool to share with her friends, and she didn't feel like they said happy birthday enough. And wanted to do what
like
asked her
once
what she
each
wanted
loudly.
To do. Yeah. After each bite, you have to say happy birthday. And so she went ahead and did it. Stacy got the sign, obviously, but they showed up today and put the sign in this morning. But her birthday's not till tomorrow. So
have you kept her in the house?
Well, luckily, she got her COVID shot yesterday, and her second shot, and so she was sleeping a lot today. So
Right.
But when I saw them setting it up, I texted Stacy and said, "Hey, your sign people showed up. Your birthday sign people showed up on the wrong day." But I accidentally sent that to Molly instead of say Stacy. So I was in one room. I hit send, realized what I did, ran into her room, hoping that the phone was sitting there, and she's looking at it and goes, "What does this mean?" And I was like,
It's the fever, dear. It's the fever.
Here's how quick I am. Today is my sister's birthday. So I said, "Oh, I meant to send that to Aunt Robin. Sorry, wrong person." But then I did send it to Stacy, and she responds to Molly and says, "Do you love it?" And Molly's like, "Love what?"
Aunt Robin's sign? What are you talking about?
So she calls me in and said, "What's Mom asking me if I love?" She's like, "Is that have something to do with that text about the sign?" And she was sitting next to her window, so I just opened her blinds, and she looked out and saw it. So we go out to look at it, and Stacy's like, Stacy had to drive far away to work with some patients today. And so she's like, "Go out and take pictures with Molly and send it to me." So we do that. Then on the way back, Molly goes, "How much was that thing?" And I was like, "You'd have rather had the money, wouldn't you?" She's so sweet. She wouldn't say it out loud, but she got a subtle smirk on her face. And I was like, "I told your mom you'd rather had the money." But
that's hard to deal with, right? Because she wants the pomp and circumstance.
yes, right.
She wants that to be cheap, though, and she wants to pocket the change.
Yeah, it's like, if we had handwritten a sign and put it out in the yard,
that's what she wants. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I'm imagining that the sign people came and took it down again this evening.
Right. They better not.
You've had your day.
Stand out there. Gotta wait at least till tomorrow morning.
All right. Let us get down to business.
Okay.
How did we leave Jon Snow? Last we saw of Lord Snow, he was headed north with 200 members of the Night's Watch. They were inspecting the latest in a string of abandoned wildling villages and reporting this news back to Castle Black and Maester Aemon via Sam's Ravens. Mackelly, why don't we give them the summary of this one?
I think we can do that. The Great Ranging plods north through the relentless rain. A horn sounds informing them that Craster's keep is not abandoned. Thorin Smallwood reckons that Craster is a friend of the Night's Watch, but Tywin lists a catalog of sins that Craster is guilty of. Mormont sends word to all the men via Jon that they are not to talk to or touch Craster's women. Jon and Sam share rumors of Craster, none of them good.
The keep turns out to be little more than a midden heap. Filthy naked girl children harvest carrots, 2 women slaughter a pig, the whole place is squalor. The Lord Commander has already gone into the Great Hall, barely a hall, and certainly not great, and Jon hurries to join. Craster says that he has not seen Benjen Stark for 3 years, so not on his most recent ranging. Mormont explains that he, Benjen, was searching for the vanished Waymar Royce. Craster did see Royce and Will and Garrett on their way out, but not, fortuitously, on their way back.
Or did he?
Maybe.
Mormont describes the empty villages and the whites at Castle Black. Craster is unmoved, but one of his wives reacts to the latter news. He insists they've had no white trouble around his keep. Mormont suggests that Craster and family go to Castle Black where they can see out the winter. But the wildling has no interest. Craster offers a roof to as many as can fit and food for 20 men, but says any man lays a hand on one of his wives, he'll lose that hand.
Craster notices Jon and recognizes him as a Stark. Introduced as Jon Snow, he calls him a bastard. Craster thinks he can help Mormont find Mance Rayder, and Jon is told to fetch Sam, who can draw an accurate map. On his way to Sam, Jon's stopped by a scream. Ghost has nabbed 2 rabbits, and the 15-year-old wife who cared for them is scared that she's next. Jon reassures her, and Jon's fairly chivalrous to the girl, but Chet is mean. You remember Chet was the former assistant to Maester Aemon, and now is the dog keeper. Chet is mean and scares the girl, saying that Ghost is eyeing her and still looks hungry. Chet and his buddy Lark reckon Jon is only brave because of Ghost.
Jon takes one of the 2 rabbits for himself, letting Ghost eat the other, although not like he had a whole lot of choice in the matter, I guess. He finds Sam, and they split the rabbit while drying their socks. Sam then goes off to draw the map. Jon and Ghost snuggle up next to the fire and under Jon's cape for protection from the rain. As Jon drifts off to sleep, he hopes that Mormont gets info tonight that will help them find his Uncle Benjen.
When Jon wakes, he sees the first magical thing he's seen north of the wall. The rain has stopped. The air has gotten cold, leaving the world covered in crystal-like ice. It makes him think of his sisters and how they'd react to the beautiful sight. His reverie is broken by the rabbit tender calling him Lord Snow. She's wearing Sam's cloak and says the fat one told her she could find him here. She asks if he's truly brother to a king, one of the accusations Lark made about him in her presence earlier. He admits he's half-brother to the king in the north.
The girl says her name is Gilly, and that Sam said Jon would help her. She wants Jon to take her with them when they leave. Jon flummoxes as to why Sam would suggest that, questions her motives. She says it's because of her baby's safety. If the baby's born a girl, well, that's fine. Craster will marry her at some point. But if the baby's a boy, Craster will give him to the cold gods that come with the white cold and have blue eyes. Jon realizes Craster was lying when he said they hadn't seen any signs of others or whites.
Jon explains that if they're hunting those very beings, they aren't headed back to the wall, and he doesn't know if they'll be back this way. With that, Gilly runs off. An irked Jon makes his way back to Craster's hall, stopping on the way to break his fast with some of his brothers. Inside the hall, Mormont offers him food, but he rejects it. Since he hasn't eaten Craster's food, he's not subject to the rules of guests' rights.
Before riding out, Jon has a quick chat with Sam about a certain girl he sent Jon's way. Then the Night's Watch moves on from Craster's keep. While riding, Jon brings up to Lord Commander Mormont that Craster has no boys, and he's heard that he gives those boys over to the wood. Mormont admits that he knows this. In fact, all rangers know this, even Benjen. The pair quickly debate the merit to Craster alive versus dead.
Mormont then reveals that Craster has told them that Mance Rayder is gathering all wildlings in one location in the Frostfang Mountains. Since it's an inhospitable place, it can't be a permanent move. His guess is that Rayder is planning to invade the Seven Kingdoms. It's been tried before, but always to failure. However, this time the current Lord of Winterfell has marched south with his strength, so if ever there was an opportunity for success, now's the time. They must find him and stop him.
One thing I just realized is it's not just that Robb marched south with his strength. It's also that the Night's Watch is at their lowest member total in a long time.
Yeah. But one thing I'd just like to point out, and this maybe should be pedantry, but they literally offer to Craster to come to Castle Black for the winter. That's like saying to a wildling, why don't you come south of the wall where it's safe for the winter? Why not say that to all the wildlings? The north is empty. There's nobody there.
They have that whole gifted new gift. They could certainly...
right.
You know.
And the only reason you need the gift is to man the Night's Watch, is to protect the wall against the wildlings who you've now let through.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely... Now, of course, there's been so many years of fighting between the Night's Watch and the wildlings and the houses in the north. I'm sure that will be unpopular opinion. Or an unpopular idea to many. But it certainly makes a certain amount of sense. It would be one less thing to worry about, really.
So backtracking, so we hear that they found 7 abandoned villages now in total before they got to Craster's Keep. White Tree, that we heard about in the last Jon chapter, was the 4th village, so they found some more.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. Yeah, and if you look on a map, Craster's Keep is significantly further north than White Tree. Maybe 3 to 4 times as far. So, and we know because Craster mentions that Sir Waymar and Garen and Will went on past them, that they were even further north. So that means that I don't know if this means anything. It just struck me as weird that Waymar and company passed as many as 7 wildling villages following those raiders. And it just, I don't know why that strikes me as odd. They're following these wildlings, meanwhile they're passing all these wildling villages.
It strikes you as odd because this whole situation is odd. The Night's Watch are protecting the realm against the wildlings, but clearly they cohabit with the wildlings. I mean, if you pass through 7 villages, there must be some kind of hello as you go by. I mean, are the wildlings your enemy or not? I mean,
right.
Do you attack those villages? I found a village, let's kill everybody, you know. I hope not. Right. I don't want the Night's Watch to be murderous barbarians, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's...
But the raiders could hide in any of those villages because they're just wildlings.
That's what I'm getting at. It's like, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Stop in each village and say, "Have you seen any wildlings who might be raiding the wall?"
No.
Oh well, look at us. No, absolutely not.
Yeah. Dolorous Ed kind of alludes to the relationship between wildlings and Night's Watch at one point in the chapter when... So Jon sent out to get an axe for Craster, and he says he's supposed to get it off of Dolorous Ed. And, you know, they're talking about... Ed is in his humorous way talking about how, oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, let's give the wildling an axe while we sleep in his... hall. And Jon says, well, Thorin Smallwood said that Craster's a friend of the Night's Watch, and Ed says, you know what the difference is between a wildling enemy and a wildling friend? The wildling enemy leaves your dead body for the animals to eat, and the friend buries you in a shallow grave. So, you know, when you're north of the wall, there's really no friend of the Night's Watch as far as the wildlings go.
So what are you looking for? If you go through the villages, you've just gone past the people you were looking for.
Yes.
They live there.
Yes. That's what kept sticking in my craw about this, about how many villages they passed following this one group of raiders.
Yeah. So setting aside the daftness of the Night's Watch's relationship with the wildlings, Craster is a real piece of work. I mean, even for
awful.
George Martin, you know,
yes.
Tywin, we mentioned the sins he accused him of. He said he's a kinslayer, a liar, a raper, a craven, traffics with slavers and demons, and worse.
Worse. Is there such a thing? Yeah, he's one of the more awful characters. We've met some awful characters, and he's one of the worst. Now, I think we've implied this, but I don't know if we've specifically said it. So he marries his daughters, is what he does. If one of his daughter wives has a girl, when she gets old enough, he marries her, and that's how he continues to grow his harem. He's got 19 wives at the moment. he's just pretty terrible. And Tywin also says the word cold is italicized. There's a cold smell to that one. And my take on that was he was meaning that he's got a vibe of some sort of association with others or white type deal.
Yeah. And as the chapter goes on, we hear what that rumor is, at least, or the accusation is. So when Jon's sent back down the line to remind everyone to keep their hands to themselves, he meets up with Sam, and Sam tells him the rumor that he's heard, which is that Craster is the child of his mother was a wildling and his father was a member of the Night's Watch.
I swear this cracked me up all week. I listened to the audiobook about probably 8 times this week, and I read through it about 3 times, and every time I got to this line, it cracked me up. And a part of it is because of the way Roy Dotrice delivers the line. It's very funny. But so he's telling Sam's telling Jon, his mother was a wildling, his father was a ranger, and he goes, so he's a and then realizes what he's about to say. Mm-hmm. And Jon's like, bastard, Sam. I've heard the word before. You could say it. Yeah. Yep. I tried to convey this to Stacy while I was reading it one night before bed. She didn't see the humor in it, really. But it wasn't lost on me.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, of course, the whole concept of that north of the wall. I mean, what is a bastard? It's a child born with unmarried parents. What is marriage? I mean,
right. It's really not that big a deal, quite honestly.
Right.
It feels like they make a bigger deal out of it than it needs to be in Westeros.
Well, I guess it makes a big deal while you have genealogical inheritance of land and titles.
Yes.
Then it
distinguishes the true line from those who are not part of the true line.
But if being married is being married in the light of the Seven, or Relor, or whoever you want to choose,
right?
Nobody north of the wall is married,
Yeah. Oh, although I guess they worship the old gods, so maybe they could get married in the eyes of the old gods in front of a weirwood tree.
Yeah.
The reason that Jon is traveling down the line is he's telling everyone about, hey, keep your hands off Craster's women. Craster's keep is up ahead. Keep your hands off Craster's women, as he makes his way down the line. And he's ultimately gets to Sir Otton Withers, who is, as we learned in the last chapter, he's leading the rear guard. So he's really just supposed to tell this to the officers, and then they can proliferate the news. And so he makes it to the end, tells Sir Otton Withers, and then he turns around and rides back up. And when he gets to Craster's keep, he's picturing, he's
a modest but a castle.
Yes, he's picturing a castle, modest one. But no, the description is it's a midden heap with the pigsty, empty sheepfold, windowless hall, scarcely worth the name.
Yeah,
and it sits atop a small hill surrounded by an earthen dike. So we're not talking eerie level of defense here. There's no bloody gate. There's no 3 way castles to impenetrable fortress.
If we were to redo the where would you most like to live in Westeros, you would not knock the Eyrie down. Now you've heard of Craster's Keep.
Ooh, Craster's Keep. I got to give that one some second thought.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
The gate into there is flanked by the skull of a bear and the skull of a ram. The bear skull is still sort of dripping flesh, which is unpleasant.
It's struck me as a little bit ominous, the whole bear skull, because Jeor Mormont his nickname is the Old Bear, and I counted at least 3 or 4 times that the word bear skull was mentioned in this chapter, and I wondered if there was like some symbolism there that like Mormont and or the Night's Watch needs to be wary of Craster and or this place, you know.
The one thing I will say about Craster is he doesn't seem to be very well defended, at least against ordinary people. He perhaps is defended against the whites and the others.
Yes.
But he seems to be,
Yes, he's not defended hardly at all, just that earthen dike.
Right. So I'm just guessing that he wasn't actually saying... He was not aware that Mormont was coming. I don't think any of his wives were acting as sort of outriders to check on, He just lives in his keep and relies on the protection of the others, it seems.
It does seem. It certainly seems that something's up, because he's incredibly vulnerable, which Jon even mentions to Sam in this chapter. But Ed mentions that as well. He kind of says the opposite of what you said. He said, did you see the bear skull there? Was, I wonder what was there before we came helloing, implying that maybe there was like a human skull or something there.
Oh, I thought perhaps it was like a colourful pennant or something. Wait, the Night's Watch are coming. Get the bear skull out.
Speaking of dollars, Ed, he was fantastic in this chapter.
He always is. He's a great character.
He is a great character. Some of his funnier lines, he says, he's digging mud out of a horseshoe, and he flings some mud out, and he goes, he asks if Jon thinks that the mud looks like crap, and he said, could this whole hill be made of Caster's crap? And Jon's like, well, he's been here a long time, so it's possible.
When Jon says he's going into the Great Hall, Ed says, if it's warm and dry, don't tell me.
Yeah, I haven't been invited, so don't tell me. Yeah. Oh, but one of my favorites is toward the end of the chapter. They're talking about the bear skull. Gren apparently missed it on the way in, or at least Tywin says, you didn't see the bear. And Gren's like, what bear? There was a bear? And Dolores, Ed, in his usual manner, says, there's always a bear. A bear killed my brother, and afterward he wore my brother's teeth around his neck on a leather necklace, and his teeth were nicer than mine. So I no longer believe him in the last chapter when he said that he used to live in a place like the hovel that they were in, and that was during the good times in his life. I think he's full of it now that I know him a little better.
Ed's other line is that both gods and dogs delight to piss on me. So we love Ed.
He's lamenting that he went into the hall when it was raining, and it stopped raining as soon as he went in. And then he was finally getting warm and dry, and then a dog crawled up on him and peed on him. And so he never did get dry like he'd hoped. But he's like, now that I'm outside again, no worries. It'll start raining again, because gods and dogs delight in pissing on me.
Yeah. So Jon mentions that when he left the wall, he was excited to behold the mysteries and wonders that awaited him beyond the wall. And here one is, I assume he's not talking about Craster's keep, but his first wildlings. I mean, this is the first wildlings he's actually met. They are just ordinary people, kind of poor and slovenly. You know?
Yeah. Just happen to be on the northern side of the wall, is all.
Right.
Yeah.
So, neither Grumpkins nor Snarks.
Nope.
And also Jon is suddenly very jealous of Pip and Toad, who he's left behind at the wall. They are not part of this because neither of them are rangers. The thought of what they're living through now, the shelter and relative warmth and occasional hot meal that you get at Castle Black, is just nirvana to Jon at this point. So I'd like to remind you that less than a year ago, Jon lived in a castle. He lived at Winterfell.
Right.
He had servants, and now his aspirations have been tuned down to the point where he'd just like to be a little less miserable than he is.
Yep. And I think it was either Mormont telling Jon this, or maybe Jon was thinking this after something Mormont said when the news came that Robb was now king in the north instead of just Lord of Winterfell. And he's like, your brother they'll call Grace, and you will drink melted snow out of your hands. And that's what he's dealing with right now. He's even jealous of Pip and Toad. They're certainly not kings in any way, shape, or form.
So Craster says that he hasn't seen Ben in 3 years. So that's long before the story started, before we saw Ben at Winterfell. Ben was searching for Waymar and company, and Craster says that he did see those guys. They stopped for a night on their way.
Yeah.
So just one more time, Will definitely wasn't at the wall a week before. No, just referring back to episode 1 pedantry.
Right.
We were right. They were wrong.
You have a really fast horse at that point.
Right.
But that whole thing about, here we go again with Waymar and company and the search for Waymar and, Benjen being sent out and then people being sent out for Benjen and all that. If there had been better communication between Ned, Jeor Mormont, and Benjen, all this might have been avoided. It just doesn't add up very well.
Do tell. Explain what you mean to me.
Well, so Ned beheaded Garrett.
Yes, I remember
and then
that.
Ben comes to Winterfell right after that. And then Ben is sent out looking for Waymar and Will. It seems like there could have been some more communication that might have avoided all of this.
For example, Ned holds Garrett until Ben gets there. They discuss it with Garrett and then behead him.
Yes, exactly. Or they send a group of Night's Watchmen down to get Garrett, bring him back. Maybe in a week or two he calms down.
And then you behead him.
Ask him what the heck's going on, and then behead him. But it just feels like they were like, "Oh, wildling, behead him!" I mean, deserter, behead him.
Yes, I'm with you. I mean, I get it. You're Ned Stark. You're a stickler, but yeah, there was information to be gleaned from him, despite the fact he was kind of petrified with fear. He could have told you something useful, at least about the outcome for Will and Waymar, which would have saved you a pointless journey.
Yeah, a few square meals and, a change of clothes, some security. Maybe he calms down enough. Now, it did say that Ned, in that chapter 1 with Bran of Game of Thrones, Bran did mention that, or maybe it was chapter 2 with Cat. Maybe it's Ned says to Cat that he did try talking to Garrett, and Garrett was basically not coherent. And maybe he told the Night's Watch, yeah, I got a deserter down here. He's not making any sense. What do you want me to do? And they're like, off with his head.
Yeah. But if he had that conversation, just as an aside, if he had that conversation, then Garrett would have been at Winterfell by the time of the beheading.
Yeah. Yes.
And he wasn't, right? They had to ride out to where
they had to ride out to find him, right?
So they had only held him for a short period of time.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I think the fact that he was so discombobulated and incoherent would have been more reason to wait to see what is going on. What has happened that you're so freaked out? Now, if you found Stiv and Usha's a wildling, but if you found Stiv and the other Night's Watch member that was with him, yeah, those guys know what they're doing. Like they are legitimately deserting, and they're
nothing to be gleaned from them.
Right.
Maybe where did you meet Osha? Oh, in the
Right.
Frostfangs, big camp. I could draw you a map.
Yeah, exactly. That maybe they could have explained, how they all met up, but otherwise they knew what they were doing at the time.
You are correct. This is very poor strategic planning. The Night's Watch is actually behaving very much like now. I'm about to malign a animal species, which I have no reason to know it actually behaves like this, but it is reported to act like this. So I'm going to mention them.
Okay.
Lemmings.
Oh, yes.
When a lemming falls off the wall, the other lemmings are supposed to follow it off the wall, right?
Yep, I've heard
That's almost literally what the Night's Watch are doing. We've sent some Night's Watch, they didn't come back. Let's send some more, and then some more, and now the whole of the Night's Watch is following in the same path that everybody else who's not come back has followed.
Exactly. It made me think of this scene from this movie. I think it was back in the 90s. I think it was a Meg Ryan movie about, it was like a comedy about Albert Einstein. Like they were interacting with Albert Einstein in some way. And he and his buddies have been playing badminton, and the shuttlecock got stuck in the tree. I think it was something like that. And they threw a tennis racket up to get the shuttlecock, but then that got stuck in the tree. Then they threw, another thing up there, and next thing you know, like the whole tree was proliferated with items, and they didn't get any of them back.
Perfect. That is exactly what's going on here. Okay, so Craster mentions that he knew that Garrod was chasing raiders, and he said that a commander that green, it would be better if he didn't catch them. I think he felt like
he's probably right.
Waymar was out of his depth.
Yeah, that was actually, I think this came up, or else I did it in back. No, I think it came up. I think Mormont might have been talking to Tyrion when he said this. But anyway, it was Mormont's call. He made that call, obviously. He's Lord Commander. But he made that call because Sir Waymar felt that he was owed command of this ranging because he was a knight, despite having been there less than 6 months on the wall. And Garrod had been there more than 40 years, and Will had been there for 4 years, plus apparently 100 plus rangings. But Mormont agreed to it because he didn't want to offend Waymar's father, Jon Royce.
Yep.
But Craster also said he liked Garrod. He, as far as crows go, that's what they call Night's Watch north of the Wall. He kind of liked Garrod because he had less ears than him. One thing we didn't mention is that Craster only has one ear. And we learned back in that prologue that Garrod had lost both ears, 3 toes, and a little finger on his left hand due to frostbite.
Yeah, a Peter Baelish, I like to call that.
Yes.
So
he's the anti-Peter Baelish. He's the non-little finger.
No little finger. So Craster's got no interest in going south of the wall. He's content here, despite the cold winds rising. We can only conclude, since he has no actual protection, that he is in some way protected by the others and from the others by some deal he struck with them.
Right.
Logistically, he's running out of everything. He has no sheep left. Ghost took care of the last 2 rabbits.
Right.
Gilly says the dogs are next for the pot. So this is just the beginning of winter.
Right, exactly.
There's years of winter to go.
If the others keep coming back, he's eventually going to run out of pigs and dogs too, because Gilly said, they've been increasing the frequency of their visits, and that's why they're out of sheep, because they've been giving up the sheep next as their sacrifices. Yeah. And I was thinking, what purpose do sheep and dogs have for the others? Like, if they need game, I assume they can manage to get their own game. I don't know what they're going to do with the sheep. But
I guess there's a sort of like, we come by every so often and we expect an offering.
Just it was something that's important to you has to be given up. Yeah, I guess so. It must be that, because I can't imagine.
Feels like it. Yeah. If I was Craster, I'd be taking the Night's Watch up on this. Normally I would say no, but this feels like a cold winter. I'm coming south.
Yeah, and we know when Sam and Jon were going from the library, when Jon went to go get Sam and they went through those worm walks, it was mentioned in that chapter there that Castle Black gets snow so high that you can't even walk around. That's why you have to use these worm walks. So they're south of the wall. This is like a many days ride north of the wall. So it's got to be even worse there.
Yeah. Mormont mentions the empty villages and says that, he asks Craster if he understands why. Craster says that's Mance Rayder's work. He sent riders to all the villages asking people to join him and give him fealty. One came to Craster's keep, and he points to the guy's tongue, which is pinned to a wall. But the guy was allowed to leave, minus said tongue.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not sure Craster could overcome most wildlings, but apparently he can.
I wondered that too. Jon did the description that when Jon saw him did say he looked powerful, but very much in the winter of his years.
Right.
So.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess 19 wives could really gang up on you, but
certainly, yeah. You could maybe drug the guy.
Yeah.
There's ways to overcome. And but then, so Mormont mentions the whites at Castle Black, Jafer Flowers and Other, and Craster acts kind of like he thinks Mormont's being crazy, and he's basically like, hey, don't scare my women with these kind of crazy stories. And the woman that happens to be there, her mouth is agape, like she seems shocked and scared. But later, Gilly talks about the others like it's old hat. Like, oh yeah, they come by, we give them we give them a baby or lamb and they go off. So
maybe it's that. Maybe it's the sort of like they're normalized to Craster's wives. We know they exist. We find a way to coexist with them. And hearing that they attacked, it's like, oh man,
yeah,
who knew? But yeah, that's a reasonable point to raise, that there does seem to be a slight inconsistency.
Yeah, but this whole thing here, when Craster acts like he's like, man, we don't have a problem with whites. Yeah, I think is specifically what he says. This is the lie that Jon mentions later when Gilly very accurately describes a white or other with their blue eyes.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Craster says when the whites come walking, he'll send them back to their grave. But again, from what we hear from Gilly, that's not true.
Nope, that sounds like blustery, braggadocious talk right there.
Yeah. So the dynamic between Craster and the Night's Watch is somewhat peculiar. Craster vocally says he's not fond of the crows, but he is oddly accommodating, and I guess he does get some things from them. I mean, in this chapter, he trades for a roof over 20 of their heads and some food for them. He gets a new axe, which obviously it's hard for him to forge new steel. Yeah. Castle forged steel would be useful to him. And also some wine. They brought a cask of wine, which he gets.
And Gilly mentions that he got a crossbow worth 100 rabbits. When she comes to see him, Jon thinks she's coming because they ate the rabbits, and she says the Lord Crow gave my father a crossbow worth 100 rabbits. So yeah, he gets some things that he can't get otherwise.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. So I get it. He's got to deal with the whites. He's got to deal with the others that keeps him safe from them. But if I was a wildling, I would be really annoyed that this guy had truck with the Night's Watch.
Right.
And if I'm a wildling raider and I've got a party of like 20 of my buddies, I could take care of Craster, unless the others are literally camped outside looking after him.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Unless they can move that quick on you, you could get to him first. I see what you're saying there. I was wondering if possibly Benjen might have showed up, because we know Craster's word is not ironclad. If maybe Benjen and company did show up, and he maybe drugged them and used them as sacrificial tributes to the
because certainly others. That's what befell
Other
Benjen's men.
For flowers, yeah.
So Jon rescues the girl, who turns out to be Gilly, from Ghost. She's pregnant. Lark and Chet are nasty and scare her, and they insult Jon along the way. Jon thinks that he's got a legitimate reason to hate him, and he's not wrong. His cushy job of looking after Maester Aemon looks really good right now compared to looking after the dogs on this long march.
Yes, he'd be on the other side of the wall right now in a warm...
Although apparently not, because Sam's here with them too.
Well, that's true. But I don't think Chet can do the things that Sam's capable of as far as writing the letters and taking care of the ravens. And
literally, I mean, the dogs will keep you warmer at night than the crows would, the ravens would. So
just ask... Ed about that. Just got to watch them peeing on you. But, we have mentioned in the chapter when Jon went to Aemon that we surmised that it was possible that Aemon and Mormont had already seen the situation coming and had plans to make a move like that, because it makes perfect sense, and someone should have noticed that besides just Jon. But, again, we don't know that. It's just a hunch.
Yeah.
Although, I did think that the way Jon handled the insults from Lark and Chet, they basically were just calling him a coward. And he calmly said, "I won't fight a brother north of the wall," and then walks away. I thought that was a huge step in his maturity.
Right, because previously any slight like that, he would have flown off the handle.
Exactly.
And someone would have had to talk him down, but yeah. Honestly, you've reached a level of maturity that you should have reached by now, Jon. Well done.
Yeah, you can make that argument for sure.
And again, the whole place is just defended by a muddy dike. It doesn't feel like that's enough to keep the wildlings out if you're in league with the Night's Watch, which clearly Craster is to a certain extent. I mean, he could argue, hey, I'm using them for my own benefit. I'm not giving them anything, really. But I'm not sure that would, typically collaborators within a country to the occupying or invading force are not treated well by their countrymen.
Solid point. There's definitely. I would very much like to know how the other wildlings see and what they think of Craster. Very interesting. Yeah, for sure.
Well, if we ever get a POV chapter with a wildling, we'll know.
And maybe, yeah. Mm-hmm. But Jon wakes up and he finally gets to see some beauty and magic in the world north of the wall. It's so beautiful that he thinks it would make Sansa cry and Arya throw herself into it. And what he sees, he wakes up and the rain has stopped and it's gotten cold and everything is just crystallized. There's a crystal from the frozen frozen rain, sheen on everything, and it's magical and beautiful.
Yeah. And he's right. That's how his sisters would have reacted. Arya would have. She's tactile. She would have gone to touch everything and feel everything, right. And Sansa would have cried at the beauty of it.
Yes,
sounds about right.
He knows his sisters well.
Yeah, and he woke from a dream of his sisters. He doesn't quite remember the dream, but he assumes it was them that he was dreaming of because he thinks of them as soon as he sees the.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was kind of unclear if he, remember if he did dream of them or if he's saying he must have dreamt of his sisters because he's thinking of them when he's looking at it. So he's enjoying all the beauty, and then he hears a girl's voice from behind him call Lord Snow, and that she got that because that's what Lark was calling him when she was in the company of them earlier or the day before, and he turns around and she says, "The fat one told me I could find you here." And of course that made me think of your dog when your dog speaks to you.
No, it was the cat. The cat.
Oh, was it Stella?
The fat one. Stella, yeah.
Okay, it was when Stella used to speak of you, she would call you the fat one, right?
The fat one, yeah. In the voice of Smeagol, referring to Sam Gamgee. Yeah. The fat one hates us.
She asks, "Are you truly the brother of a king?" And he says, "Yes, I'm half brother to the king in the north." And I thought that must be an awkward turn of phrase for her because the 7 kingdoms are all south as far as she is concerned.
Right. In fact, that particular dichotomy gets mentioned several times in the book because people talk about this being the north, but everybody north of the wall thinks that everything south of the wall is the south.
Is south, yeah. Right. The reason she's asking is because she believes that kings have to keep their people safe and she wants to get protection for her baby.
Yeah. And Jon, of course, refuses this because what can he do? They're heading north. They're heading into battle or something. He can't take her with her that direction, and there's no guarantee they're coming back this way. So Sam has really put him in an awkward situation by even suggesting this to Gilly.
Right. Yeah.
But when he goes back into Craster's Great Hall, he refuses to accept. He never slept underneath his roof, and he refuses any food when he gets in there. And one of the things, I think you're going to make this point later, is that when you accept food from a host, you are making a promise not to cross them. This is a binding oath that you two will be friends, at least for the length of your visit. You will be civil to one another. And he refuses that, which perhaps gives him some opportunity to take Gilly's side in some way.
A little bit of wiggle room that if he can do something to help her, that he won't be violating guest right. Now, I was going to put guest right in the background, but it's short enough. I figure I'll just mention it now since we're talking about it. So guest rights is a law of hospitality that is sacred, especially in the north, and apparently north of the north. Guests of really any level of society it's not just highborn to highborn. A guest that has a food and drink from a host table beneath the host roof, then guest right is invoked. And once it's in place, once guest right is in place, neither guest nor host can harm the other for the length of the stay, like Simon just said. If either does, it breaks a sacred covenant believed to invoke the wrath of the gods, both old and new. So, big deal.
So Gilly wants rescuing. She wants it because she's afraid that if she has a son, that Craster will use that son as a sacrifice to the others. With good reason, presumably. That's what's happened to every other boy that's ever been born there.
Right. There's a precedent. There's definitely a precedent.
Presumably, lots of precedents. Yeah.
I like how she says, "I don't want much. Just take me with you when you leave." And he's like that's a simple ask.
So if the others do take the baby boys, what happens to them? I mean, it's hard to imagine. I mean, they don't turn them into whites, because what would be the point of a mewling white? You know,
it would just lay there. You could put your finger in the white's mouth, and they couldn't even bite you or anything. So
right.
Yeah, they must raise them, like turn them into others, raise them as others. Maybe that's how maybe others can only turn newborns into others or something.
Okay.
I'm just making this up as I go along. Just what do they do with the newborn baby?
That what you're saying makes sense to me, but I don't know.
So either these boys are taken by the others, or they're being left as offerings and die of exposure and or are eaten by animals. So regardless, it's a bad fate.
If I was the others, that wouldn't be enough for me.
The little boys you don't want anymore, that you didn't want in the first place.
Right. I mean, just letting them die in the cold, I'm not protecting Craster for that. I want the baby for my own wicked ends, whatever they might be.
Yes.
So
yes.
I definitely think that they take them in some way. Gilly accurately describes the others, so she's seen them, or at least someone at Craster's Keep has seen the others. I mean, enough that the word has got around. She knows about the blue eyes.
Yeah. That goes back to the other daughter-wife seeming so shocked about when Mormont mentioned the whites. But like you said, maybe she's never actually seen them in action before.
Yeah. Jon wonders if Uncle Benjen knew about the murder of the infant sons. Jon thinks that Benjen would react to that if he knew about it.
I think that's why he asked, because so he finally confronts Mormont when they've left Craster's Keep and they're riding next to each other, and he says he doesn't have any boys, and I've heard the rumor that he leaves them for the wood, just leaves them in the wild to die, because he doesn't mention the others, but and then Mormont says, "Yeah, I know. All the Rangers know." And he says, "Even Benjen." And he's like, "All the Rangers know." And I think it's important to Jon because Benjen, as a Stark, Jon would expect him to react how Jon says that Ned mentioned handling a situation like this, that some men aren't worth keeping around if they're basically bad people.
But there is the whole guess right things. I mean, maybe Benjen broke bread with him before realizing this, and now he avoids him. Now he goes around Craster's Keep, whereas other members of the Night's Watch stay there.
I had that same thought. Maybe that's why I hadn't seen him in 3 years, because rather than kill him because he knows that he is in some ways helpful to the Night's Watch, he just avoids him.
Right, yeah.
Or Craster's lying about not having seen him in 3 years. Could be that as well.
Possibly.
So one thing, this conversation about the boys being left to the wild or to the others, Mormont says, "Hey, if it was just him not wanting them around, we'd be happy to take them and raise them, as raise them to the black, make them future Night's Watchmen. But Craster has gods that he has to sacrifice them to, and that's what he believes in." And I thought, a Night's Watch nursery. Can you imagine that? Do not put Alistair Thorne in charge of that.
2-year-old melees.
Right. But, on one hand, it would be a good way to keep... I mean, Craster seems to be prolific, at least for a few years longer, at creating children.
19 wives will help with that.
Yes, exactly. But So, that would be one way. They already struggle, and this way they could raise them from basically birth. But as we know, there's no slavery allowed in Westeros. So would the boys be free to leave when they reach an age to make such a decision because they've not committed any crimes? And that's, if you haven't committed the crime, you're allowed to leave before you take the black.
Yeah. So according to Mormont tells Jon that Craster told him Mance Rayder's gathering the people, the wildlings and the Frostfangs. Dennis Mallister had heard the same thing from the wildlings, but now they have a map of where to find them. We learned in Jon 9, which was the last Jon chapter in Game of Thrones.
It was,
right?
Yes.
That Corin Halfhand caught a wildling, and there were empty villages out there in the west, and that they'd seen huge fires in the Frostfang Mountains. And so now
we know why.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Speculate why.
Yeah, and it's so they've seen 7 empty villages on their trek north, and over at the Shadow Tower, they've found empty villages in the west side of the wall as well. So he's clearing them out. He's clearing out all the villages, seems like. But then we discovered that Mormont actually knew Mance Rayder.
Yeah, did we know previously that Mance Rayder was a member of the Night's Watch?
I believe it was mentioned already that he was a member of the Night's Watch. I don't believe it was mentioned that Mormont knew him. But he says, basically, he's bold. He's a bold guy, and he's not blind. He can see that, well, if he can see. We don't know. I don't know if he can. If there's a 700-foot wall between him and Winterfell. But if he knows that the Night's Watch numbers are down, which he probably does as a former member of the Night's Watch, and if he knows that the North is short of their lord and a lot of their fighting men, then this is as good a time as they're ever going to get to attack, to try and invade the Seven Kingdoms.
Yep.
And you might think that, remember when Osha was trying to convince Robb and Bran, trying to get Bran to convince Robb that Robb was marching in the wrong direction. It should be north. He's marching, not south. Your fight is in the north. You might have thought, oh, well, didn't Osha already tell Robb that Mance Rayder is going to attack? The actual conversation in Bran 6 that she had with Bran specifically is about whites and others. And she says that's why she fled with Stiv. Didn't have anything to do with Mance Rayder planning on invading the south. So this is somewhat new news to us here.
Yeah. Yeah. So Osha partly fled south because she says that Mance Rayder thinks that he can fight the others. But that's because he's not from the north. He's from south of the wall. She is from north of the wall, and she knows better. So that's why she fled.
Yeah. So the chapter ends like the last 2-3 sentences. Jon says, well, what are we going to do? And Mormont says, we're going to find him. We're going to fight him. We're going to stop him. And I thought, gathering in one location isn't a crime necessarily. Right. They're allowed.
Going to go in there and say, go back to your villages, every one of you.
Right. Now, he's got a hunch that he's going to invade the Seven Kingdoms, but he doesn't know that. Maybe they're joining forces together to defend against the others, and maybe they're doing it in the Frostfangs because it's a more defensible location.
Right. And they're not going to invade the Seven Kingdoms. They're going to try and get into the Seven Kingdoms so that they can survive the winter.
Right. Yes.
That's really what they're doing.
Yes.
It's not like they're going to be marching on King's Landing.
Solid point. Regardless of what their intent is, doesn't it make more sense to spend this time figuring out how to guard larger stretches of the wall versus ride north of the wall and open battle? I mean, it's the reason you have the wall in the first place, is to protect you against those things that are north of it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Do you have some background?
Yeah, I got a little bit of background. So Lark, he is the one that was kind of verbally sparring with Jon along with Chet. He was described by Jon as being a sister man. And what that means is he's from an area known as the Three Sisters. And the Three Sisters are a group of islands found in the Bight, which is south of White Harbor and north of the Mountains of the Moon. The island's names are Sweet Sister, Long Sister, and Little Sister. And people from the Three Sister are known as Sistermen, as we just found out in this chapter. And some have webbing between their hands and feet, which they call the Mark. The islands technically owe fealty to House Arryn in the Vale, but it's a pretty loose fealty. They're primarily ruled by House Sunderland, and Houses Burrell of Sweet Sister, Longthorpe of Long Sister, and Torrent of Little Sister are sworn to those Sunderlands. The people from the Three Sisters are considered to be greedy and not the most trustworthy, and Septons consider the island to be a home of avarice and sin. And here's an example of that. There are these beacons that burn along the shores of the Three Sisters to warn of passing ships of danger, or to warn passing ships of danger, that is, which, that's nice and all. Well, some sistermen use false lights to lure ships into wrecks and then steal their cargo.
Huh. Thank you for that. Comparison with the television show, it's this is all kept in very large part. Ghost scares Gilly because she is holding a rabbit, not him holding the rabbit and growling at her.
Okay.
Sam is the one who saves Gilly from Ghost.
I bet the rabbit would prefer the show option.
The rabbit was pretty much a goner. Either way at this point. Sam saves Gilly from Ghost, and so she thinks that Sam is very brave. And Gilly and Sam come together to make their plea to Jon, who is naturally rather annoyed at Sam for this.
As you would be.
Rather than hearing rumours of what Craster does with his sons, Jon actually witnesses it.
Oh.
The night that they're there, Craster takes a baby into the woods in the middle of the night, and Jon sees a blue-eyed monster take the baby away.
Okay.
So they show their hand.
Does the blue-eyed monster hold the neck properly? I mean, this is a newborn baby. Gotta cradle that neck.
I don't remember, but it's a good point. Pedantry Corner. I will say that, I know Jon was trying to keep his guest rights.
I don't think he really thought about it as that until Gilly pointed it out.
He had a chance to sleep under a roof and he chose not to, and it just seems a bit obtuse to me to not sleep under the roof if you can.
Yeah, Sam went and did it. Dolores Ed went and did it. Yes, I get what you're saying.
Sam took his pen and parchment and his pillow.
With his special blankie. I was thinking, so Craster says, he's talking about Garrett, talking about him, losing his ears and his fingers and his toes, I think it was. But anyway, he says, and I hear he's got no head now either. And I thought, now this could have been mentioned before Jon got into the hall. It could have been, hey, remember Garrett? Yeah, he got beheaded. That could have been brought up. But when Mormont mentions,
seems unlikely. Just by the way, it seems unlikely.
Okay, good. When Mormont mentions them, Garrett, Will, and Sir Waymar, it seems like he's bringing them up for the first time. So I'm wondering how in the world Craster knew about Garrett losing his head. Maybe it was other rangings. There have been other rangings since then looking for them. So
perhaps you were right. Perhaps Benjen Stark stopped by and Craster's lying about it.
Could be. Yes, exactly.
Okay, we don't have much news and notes, do we? But we do have a nice review from Xavier Desmond on Apple Podcasts in the UK. Great A Song of Ice and Fire podcast. There are many Game of Thrones podcasts, but this is the best I've found for book readers. The two hosts are funny and informative and make great companions for a reread. Highly recommended. Thank you, Xavier Desmond. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Great review. Much appreciated.
So the one thing we should be talking about, given that this is episode 97, is we should be talking about our plans for the 100th episode. What have you got, Mackelly? Nothing? I don't have anything either. So maybe we won't do anything, but we still have a couple of weeks. But obviously it's not going to involve a call for anything because it's too late now. We haven't called for anything.
Yes, so our listeners are off the hook for any action on their part, I guess.
Yeah. We'll do something, I'm sure, but yeah. The problem is it's going to hit our summer vacations. It's the problem. It's going to hit right on it. So it's going to be difficult to do something special, I feel.
Yes, and I haven't been on social media and on the Discord server as much these past few weeks because Simon and I have been trying to build in some episodes for summer vacation purposes. So I apologize for that. And it also has not allowed us a lot of time to think about 100th episode stuff. Yeah. So,
well, you know what, Mackelly? We have never let ourselves down. Well, I mean, I've gone too far. I've gone too far. We'll come up with something. I'm sure.
We will, hopefully. If not, on episode 99, we'll mention we've got nothing.
We've got nothing. All right, let's conclude. Craster is pretty rotten, but I also think he's in a death spiral of some sort here. He's out of rabbits, out of sheep. He can't have that many sons on the production line.
Yeah. But he has to realize it as well.
And he's not allowed to eat them. He has to give them away.
Right. Yeah, good point. He has to realize this. I mean, it's not his first winter. Maybe this deal with the others helps him out in some way. I'm not sure, but maybe he's just.
I can't imagine they're big farmers, you know.
Other farmers.
12 bushels of wheat for your baby.
Yes, exactly. So he was given a great opportunity that apparently not many wildlings are offered. So he maybe should have reconsidered that.
Yeah. John's right that Sam is fairly book-wise, but he can be pretty stupid.
He's got a big heart.
John did leave the door open to help. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely keeping the door open to help Gilly in some way. He didn't take Craster's offer of food. But there really is nothing they can do as far as I can see. I mean...
Yeah, and guest right really only affects you while you're at that visit. Right. Like if you come back, I think it resets and you have to do it all over again.
If they set off and they're like a quarter of a mile down the road and John says, "Oh, I left my cell phone," you know.
Right.
Come on, ladies, with me.
Yeah, but even if he wanted to help Gilly, what could he possibly do? Maybe he and Sam could trade cloaks, and it would look like Sam is wearing a tiny little cloak, and Jon has a huge cloak, and Gilly could just ride on his horse underneath the cloak.
Interesting. Yeah, that could work. I'm not sure how long you could keep that going, but...
Yeah, I doubt long enough. But then when you get to Castle Black, let's say they figure out how to do it, then what? You just send her loose, a pregnant 15-year-old loose south of the wall, and be like, okay, make it to Molestown. Good luck.
Right. Pregnant 15-year-old, yeah.
Yes, I'm sure that'll go well.
Yeah. And I just love the idea that the others can be reasoned and bargained with. I mean, it's just good to know.
Yeah, why haven't more wildlings figured this out?
Right, I mean, like, now I'm thinking, first of all, you don't fight Mance Rayder. You say, look, come south of the wall. It's warmer down there. Just, you know, I mean, don't do too much, you know, just like, you know. You can do a bit of hunting, bit of planting, but don't be like, you know, invading our towns and everything will be fine. And then, once you've done that, you move on to the others. Listen, I know you want, you know, zombie flesh, whatever it is you want. Can't we come up with something here?
Maybe instead of beheading deserters, they should kick them north of the wall.
That's right. Maybe that could be it. There could be 2 tiers of Night's Watch. You know? If you're rotten, you get into the Night's Watch. And if you're really rotten, other side of the wall for you.
Yes. There you go. I think we've solved all their problems. And like we've been saying, it's so curious how the other wildlings must look at Craster. Do they look at him like he's a special, like there's something special about him? Like, oh, there's Craster. He's got to deal with the others. Or do they look at him like, we need to get that guy because he's a friend of the Night's Watch and he harbors them. Right. But yet nobody does.
Yep. And he only has 19 wives to protect him physically.
Right. Yes. So, and 1 axe, apparently.
Not even.
And the Night's Watch is heading for the Frostfangs, which is a large, formidable mountain range. And they're going to go try and stop Mance Rayder and his... combined forces of wildlings. And Mormont makes a good point about the weak state of the North and the lessened numbers of the Night's Watch. But, you know, they have a 700-foot wall for a reason.
Yeah. But it does feel like news leaks through that wall.
It does. Know? Yeah.
Right.
I was trying to think of ways, and I remembered back to the Bran chapter when the Umbers were saying about how, little ships of wildlings are sailing around the wall and making it to their lands. And I wondered maybe some of them infiltrate the north, get news, and then make the dangerous trek back, possibly.
Right.
And then finally, or I don't know, at least finally for my thoughts, can Craster be taken? And he's the one that's telling them. Craster's the one that's telling them. Yeah, they're in the Frostfangs. Yeah, they're combining all the forces in the Frostfangs. Clearly, we've discovered that he is a liar and will do anything for a reward, including give over his infant children. So, would it be dangerous to completely trust I've been given 100% truth here by Craster?
It's a good point. What may be gathered in the Frostfangs might be a huge horde of others.
Right. Maybe the others told him that.
Right. Look, we'll bring you your sheep back if you send us 200 members of the Night's Watch.
Right. Yeah. And I was just thinking maybe he and Mance Rayder have a deal that the Night's Watch don't know about, and he's actually leading them into a trap or sending them in the wrong direction, and the wildlings are actually going to do an end around and end up at the wall, which is very depleted now, but still 700 feet tall and spans the length of the continent. So,
right. Yeah, still that. Okay, as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Discord.
And if you wouldn't mind going out and leaving us a 5-star rate and or a glowing review, we certainly would appreciate that. And hey, if you do, leave us a review. We might read it on a future episode.
Definitely will. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.